Hey Beach, welcome to Beach Church Online. My name is Ryan. I'm the student pastor here, and we're so glad that you're with us. Once again, we'd love for you to be involved in the chat. So if you're in the chat right now, we'd love for you to just share, what did you eat for breakfast? Or what are you eating right now? Or what are you cooking as you listen to my voice? We are in week 5 of Peace in the Chaos, Peace in the Chaos. And this is my first time preaching during quarantine. I've not preached in the past couple months because we had our second child, and so March 26th we had Aspen Ellington Sweat, and we are super excited to have her. There's a picture of her. She's starting to smile when we do stupid voices, and so we're so thankful for her. And in the stress of having 2 children and being home constantly recently, I was kind of thinking, it's tough for a time, but it's kind of like working out. Like, it sucks sometimes, but you know that maybe in the end it'll be worth it. And so that's kind of what I've been going through in my mind with 2 children that are both young. We are once again in week 5 of this series, Peace in the Chaos. And I want to kind of start with this idea that we can only control what we can control. Maybe you've heard a coach say that before. Maybe you've heard a boss say that. Maybe a parent says, you know what? Control what you can control. That's all you can do. And that's really kind of what we're going to focus on this today, is controlling what you can control. Because in this world, we have so much chaos, don't we? We have so much chaos. And here's where chaos comes from. It comes from 8 billion people on really a small planet, all competing with different agendas. We all want different things. We're all looking for different types of happiness. And when 8 billion people are going in different directions, there's going to be chaos. And then when you throw in something like a pandemic and a worldwide shutdown and the economic shutdown and a quarantine and all that kind of stuff, it just creates more and more chaos. But make no mistake, even before the whole coronavirus thing, there was chaos. And there always will be chaos as long as there are people living on this earth going in different directions. And we can't control all of that. But we can control what we can control. And that's really what we're going to look at this morning as we look at Proverbs chapter 13, verse 20. But before we get to that, I want to talk about how God helps us deal with chaos. As we've been talking about the whole time, like, he brings peace. He brings peace to, oh my gosh, I know this is so unprofessional. I promised my daughter I would say hello to her. Hello, Sinclair. I know you're waiting for me. I could not keep preaching the sermon if I didn't do that. I'm sorry. Sinclair, I love you. Okay, keep going on. I know that's terrible. Carrie probably hates me right now. Okay, so anyway, there's 2 types of peace that God brings to us, that God gives us. 2 types of peace. One is a supernatural peace, a peace that comes through the power of the Holy Spirit, a peace that comes when we go to God and we say, I need to give you my mess and I need that comfort. I need your presence. I need your peace. It's a supernatural peace that nothing in the world can compare to. Nothing in the world can compare to. Jesus actually said, I bring a peace that the world cannot give. And so that's one type of peace. But the second type of peace is kind of what we've been talking about throughout this series. It's a peace that comes through wise living or through obedience to God's ways, God's commands, God's, if you want to call them, rules. And here's the thing that we've got to realize about God's commands, what God teaches us to do. Everything he teaches us to do benefits us. It may not feel good. It may not be easy. It may be actually very, very difficult. It might bring on some trouble of its own, but his commands lead to a peace in a world full of chaos. Wise living gives us peace in a chaotic world. Wise living gives us peace in a chaotic world. When we are obedient to God, when we listen to God, we are able to avoid some of the pitfalls, obstacles, and chaos that we bring on ourselves. Once again, we've got to control what we can control. And if you kind of think about it, there's 3 places where chaos comes from. There's 3 places where chaos comes from. One is just a broken world. We talk about this often, but when sin entered into the world, God's perfect world was broken. And even though it wasn't his desire for that to happen, it was our choice that led to that. And that leads to things like sickness. It leads to death. It leads to natural disasters, typhoons, hurricanes, flooding, earthquakes. Like those are things that are just in a chaotic world because the world is just broken. We can't control that. We can't do anything about that. That's going to happen for the rest of the physical time here on earth until we enter into eternity. And so we can't do anything about that. We got to control what we can control. These next two we can do something about. The other two places where chaos comes from is other people, and you, me. Let's start with other people. When we are in a world with other people, they do things that affect us. The people that are close to you do things that affect you. It may be a friend betraying you. It may be something your spouse or your ex-spouse did. It may be something your parent did or did not do. It may be something that a boss did. It may even be something like, years ago when Enron went under, like there were decisions that were made by people high up in the company that affected people that had never even met them before. So sometimes we're affected by people we've never met. Sometimes we're affected by rulers and governments and leaders that we have never even come in contact with because the decisions they make create chaos in our life. So chaos comes from a broken world. It comes from other people, and it comes probably most of all from us. Think about the stupidest decision you made back in college or in high school. If you're in middle school or high school, just think of like the stupidest decision you've made in the past 12 months. And I bet you that probably you were a part of that stupid decision. Probably you were a part of making that mistake. So often we want to blame other people, we want to blame the world, we want to blame the economy, but so often, think about it, the things that keep us up at night, the things that bother us really come because we did something stupid. We said something we shouldn't say. We didn't do something. We did do something. We broke a relationship. We broke someone's trust. We made just a foolish choice. And if we really boil it down, out of those three things, a broken world, other people, and us, most of our chaos in our life comes from the people around us and us. The people around us and us. And so Proverbs 13:20, I believe really speaks to those last two. Understanding that we can only control what we can control and that most of our issues come from the people around us and us. Proverbs 13:20 gives us the solution. And we're just gonna read one verse today. So it might feel a little bit like a TED Talk instead of a sermon, but there is so much we could talk about in just this one verse. Here's what the writer says: walk with the wise and become wise. Walk with the wise and become wise. And then there's a second part. For a companion of fools suffers harm. The original language for suffers harm kind of means just being broken, being fractured. So a companion of fools gets broken, gets hurt. Walk with the wise and grow wise. For a companion of fools suffers harm. You may have seen this on a poster before. You may have heard a motivational speaker or a teacher or a parent say this, so it may seem a little bit cliche, but it is so true. Your friends will change your future. This is what the writer is saying thousands of years ago. He's saying, your friends will change your future. You walk with the wise, you're gonna grow wise. If you're a companion of fools, you will suffer harm. And here's the cool thing about this scripture. It's not even saying you have to be wise. It's not even saying you have to know something or have some special knowledge or be super smart or clever. It's only saying if you would just pick the right people around you, you will immediately become more wise. Your life will immediately be smoother and more full of peace just by surrounding yourself. Not even a decision you make, not even what you do, not even what you know, but just who you walk with. You don't even have to be smart or wise or memorize anything. Just surround yourselves with wise people and you will become more wise. Your friends will change your future. And that can go either way. It can go in a good way or not so good way. If you're surrounded by people that are financially irresponsible, you're more likely to be financially irresponsible. If you're surrounded by people that are addicts or alcoholics, you're more likely to get into those habits or get into addiction. But by the same token, if you are around people that really care about family or great parents or great husbands and wives and really value their family and put them first ahead of jobs and sports and everything else and money, like you will probably be a better husband, wife, mother, father, friend. It works both ways. When whoever you're surrounded by, you generally become like. And the reason why your friends will change your future is that there is a fact, whether you're, whatever race you are, however much money you have, no matter like what background you grew up in, whether you're a Christian or not, whether you grew up in another faith, whether you're still a part of another faith, it doesn't matter. Like this applies to all of us. This is a truth for all of us. Here is why your friends change your future, because the people around you always influence you. The people around you always influence you. Always. They will influence you, again, positively or negatively, towards wisdom or towards foolishness, towards God or away from God. The people around you always influence you. I remember it was 1992. The city was Vero Beach, Florida. The setting was a elementary school playground. The protagonist in this story was myself. And I'm running around on the recess area. I'm between. There was this ditch between the playground and the basketball courts. And I remember all my friends were jumping over the ditch. It had rained a couple days before, and so like the ditch was full of water. It was not very deep or anything. It was just a couple feet, but like it was full of water. And they're all like, "Oh, this is so cool! Like we'll jump over the ditch." And I was like, "Oh, like I was like last in line." I was like, I guess I have to do it, right? Because I was influenced. And I remember running and like if I stink at golf, but like when you play golf, if there's no water, you're not really worried, you just hit the ball. But when there's water, like if you're not very good, you just end up like, it gets in your mind and you like are so likely to hit the ball into the water. It was kind of like that. Like I'm running over this ditch. If it had been empty, I probably would have been fine, but the water was there and I started thinking and I kind of start half stepping and I jump and I just land like waist deep in the water. I start crying and I have to go to the office. And then the most devastating thing happened. I called my mom and I told her, you have to bring more clothes. I told her which jeans to bring. There were 2 pairs of jeans in the dryer. She brought the wrong jeans. And then it started all over again. She got there and I was crying again. She was supposed to bring the acid wash tight jeans with holes in them. She brought these slightly looser mom jeans to me. And it was devastating. And it was even worse than being embarrassed in front of my friends, because for the next 3 hours, I had to wear the jeans I didn't want to wear. And why did that all happen? Because I was influenced. And you may say, okay, student pastor, you're talking about something for teenagers or first graders or second graders or little kids. Let's not be full of pride and think that this doesn't apply to older people. Do not think that sometime you graduate from the influence of other people. If you're 53, you're 62, you're 75, it still applies. We are influenced by the people around us. And it's more than peer pressure, although that's part of it, but it's more than peer pressure. Because subconsciously, beneath our awareness, every time we go anywhere, our brain is reading the room, reading what other people are doing, and picking up cues from the actions of other people. How are they talking? How are they acting? Are they animated? Are they chill? Like, what are they dressed like? What's the volume of their voice? What's going on here? And it informs your behavior, whether you like it or not. You may be like, I'm so independent. I don't follow anybody. I kind of march to a beat of my own drum. No, you don't. You do what other people do, whether you like it or not. You get influenced by the people around you. There are these 2 guys, doctors, sociologists, scientists, named Nicholas Christakis. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Nicholas Christakis and James Fowler. 11 years ago, they wrote a book called Connected. And basically the whole idea of the book, it wasn't a Christian book, it was just a science book. The whole idea of the book was that basically we become who we're around. We are influenced by the people that we're connected to, especially in this age of social media. We are influenced by the people we're connected to, and we influence the people we are connected to. And they did all this research, all these studies of thousands of people, and they came up with this hypothesis or this theory that they called 3 degrees of influence. 3 degrees of influence. And here was the basic idea behind 3 degrees of influence. That you are not just affected by the person that you're friends with. You're also affected by your friend's friend and your friend's friend's friend, up to that third degree. After that, it's a negligible effect. But you affect those three relationships and they affect you. And so they found if you had a friend who was a smoker, you were 61% likelier to smoke. But if your friend's friend smoked, you were 29% likelier to smoke. And if your friend's friend's friend smoked, you were 11% likelier to smoke. So even that person you may not know was affecting you. The same thing went for obesity and weight gain. The same thing went for happiness. The numbers are a little bit lower, but they still matter because we all want to be happy, right? If you had a friend who's happy, 15% likelier to be happier. If you had a friend who was happy, you were 10% likelier to be happy. And if you had a friend who had a friend who had a friend who was happy, you were 6% likelier to be happy. And you may say 6%, that's nothing, who cares? Well, they also did studies that said if you were to get a $10,000 annual raise tomorrow, it would likely make you 2% happier. And so your friend's friend's friend affects your happiness 3 times as much as the $10,000 raise. We are influenced by each other. We are connected with one another. The people around us influence us. The friends that we have lead to a future. You walk with the wise, you grow wise. You're a companion of fools, you suffer harm. There was this guy in the Old Testament who was a companion of fools. His name was Samson. Maybe you've heard of him. You can find this in Judges 13, 14, 15, and 16. And Samson was like the Hebrew Hercules. This guy was amazing. He was a judge, a leader of the Israelite people. He led them against the Philistines, and he was kind of like the king before they had kings. And he was basically a superhero. He could defeat anybody in the world. He was the strongest man in the world. He could do anything. Nobody could defeat him. He was like, he had unlimited strength. He was like strong as an ox, but he was also as dumb as an ox. Like he was so foolish. But the stupidest thing he did was surround himself with foolish people. Over and over again, he got himself into situations because of who he hung out with and what those people were about. And then he meets this girl, his ultimate downfall, this girl named Delilah. What a nice name. There's some weird names in the Bible, but Delilah, that's a nice one. I remember when I was on the way to and from Tallahassee in college, I'd drive home on Sunday nights and didn't really have Bluetooth and podcasts yet. And so I would just listen to the radio, and there's this girl, maybe you know about her, on Sunday nights. Her name's Delilah. Delilah. And she would play all these love songs. I got a love connection from San Francisco down to Charlotte, North Carolina, and they want to reach out to you with a Boys to Men song, all that kind of stuff. So I'd listen to her. She was so nice. This Delilah wasn't so nice. This Delilah was like an evil, evil woman. And basically the Philistines, the enemies of God's people, come to Delilah, and they're like, we know you and Samson have got a thing, and we were wondering, could you tell us the secret of his strength? Because if we don't kill him, if we don't get rid of him, we're never going to defeat the Israelites. So can you help us figure this whole thing out? And even though she was supposed to be lovers with Samson, she agreed. They bribed her, and she said, okay. And so she goes to him. Imagine this. If you read it, you will be like, Samson, you are so stupid. It's easy to see in other people. It's not so easy to see in ourselves. And so she goes to him and she's like, hey, what's the secret to your strength? And he's like, if you tie me up with bowstrings, then I'll just be weak. And then she does it to him. And then he falls asleep and she yells, Samson, the Philistines are here. They all come out from the corners of the room, and he breaks out and he beats them up and they go away. You would think at this point, Samson would be like, Delilah, I mean, she's good looking, but she's crazy. I'm not sure if I can stay with her. But he stays with her. How foolish. He was surrounding himself and being influenced by a foolish, bad influence. Then she comes to him again. Why did you lie to me, baby? Baby, I thought you loved me. This stuff is in the Bible. It's crazy. She's like going to him, manipulating him, trying to get him to tell her the secret. And he's like, all right. And he tells her again. And she does it again. She ties him up. They all come out like they were, I don't know, already there. And they try to get him, and he breaks out and he fights him. And then a third time it happens again. You would think at this point, Samson would be like, 3 times, I told her what my weakness was. She did it to me. Philistines just came out of my closet, and I don't know, maybe I shouldn't be hanging out with Delilah anymore. And then again, She comes to him, oh, baby, I thought you said you loved me. She says that in the Bible. This isn't like, man, manipulative people didn't come in 2020. They started a long time ago, and she comes out, and she's like, oh, baby, I thought you loved me. Why don't you tell me the truth? Why won't you just tell me how to defeat you? What a weird question. So he finally says, if you were to cut my hair, I'd lose my strength. See, his parents had made a promise to God, and the power wasn't in his dreadlocks. The power was in the promise. The power was in the obedience. And the parents say, we will not cut his hair. And that's where the strength of God will come from, that commitment that we've made. And he knew this, but he tells her anyway. He lays his head in her lap and he falls asleep. She shaves his head. And it says he woke up when she says the Philistines are upon us. And he thought to himself, I'm just gonna beat him up again. And all of a sudden, he had no strength. How foolish, how dumb can you be? Well, he was surrounding himself with the wrong people, allowing someone into his life who he should not have allowed in. His eyes are gouged out. He's put into shackles, and he's led away as a slave to entertain the Philistine people. That's Samson's story. There's another guy in the Old Testament, an even worse situation, young teenage guy who's taken out of his home by the Babylonians, and he's taken to this foreign land with a different culture, a different language, different religion, different everything. And he gets there, and he's told, you have to live this way. His name was Daniel, and he went with a few of his friends. And he's put into this terrible situation, and he doesn't have a Bible. He doesn't have a Bible to read, to stay close to God. He doesn't have a podcast of his favorite preacher. He doesn't have a church service to go to on Sunday. He's got nothing. And he's being indoctrinated every single day. And he's being told to live against the commands of God, and yet he didn't. How could he possibly have the strength to stand up to a king, to stand up to a government who had destroyed his home, who had taken him away from his family and everything that was familiar to him? How could he do that? Because he had wise friends, and he walked with them. We know them as Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they made a pact together. We are going to eat what God says we should eat. And then later, Daniel's not involved in this story, but Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are put in a situation where if they don't bow down to an idol, they will be thrown into a furnace. Many of you have heard this story. And they say, well, we're not gonna do it. Maybe if there had only been one of them, they would have. They would have gotten scared. That they would have thought, I don't wanna die. But all three of them banded together. The Old Testament says, a strand of 3 cords is not easily broken when talking about relationships. These 3 young men stayed together. They find themselves in front of the king who says, you've got one more chance to bow down. They looked at each other and they said, no, we're not gonna do that. And you know what? You could throw us in the fire and our God will save us. And then they say, but even if he doesn't save us, even if we go in there and we burn to ashes, we are not going to bow down to your idol. How could these men look at the most powerful man in the nation and say that? Feeling the heat of the flames next to them. How could that happen? Because they were walking with the wise. And they were strong. And they were wise. And in this situation, God came through. This is a fourth person, like the son of the gods. Some think it's an angel, some think it's Jesus before he came to earth, was in the fire with them, and they came out not even smelling like ash. See, the people around you influence you. Samson didn't make the right choices about people around him. Daniel did. Walk with the wise, you grow wise. If you're a companion of fools, you suffer harm. But I would wager that this has more, especially right now, than just who we're around. Because we're not around many people right now, probably. And it's not just about the relationships, especially in the day and age where we have the internet and radio and TV and podcasts and all that kind of stuff. I want to ask you, I want you to ask yourself, who is influencing you? Because this isn't just a verse about your relationships. It's really a verse about influence. You walk with the wise, you allow wise influences into your life and you will grow wise. If you allow foolish influences into your life, you will suffer harm. During the quarantine, what podcasts have you been listening to? What TV shows have you been watching? What news channel are you watching? Don't we know, it doesn't matter what your political leanings are, don't we know that news channels make money off of controversy? They're selling us controversy. You wonder why I feel so stressed. I'm so anxious right now. I'm so worried about everything that's going on. I wonder what you're letting into your home. I wonder what influences you're letting into your life. It's not just about who you're around, but who you allow in, what you allow in. What do you read on your Facebook feed? There are some friends on your Facebook feed, which by the way, I mean, nobody has 3,000 friends. Like you just need to block, because what they type on your feed affects you negatively. You walk with the wise, you grow wise. If you're a companion of fools, if you read the Facebook statuses and stories and videos of fools, you will suffer harm. Some of us have felt so anxious, have such a lack of peace because we're going to the wrong websites, because we're looking at the wrong things and reading the wrong articles. And I'm not telling you to be ignorant. I'm not telling you to just stick your head in the sand and just pretend none of it's happening. But we have to admit that the things that we allow into our lives affect us positively or negatively. Maybe your quarantine, your quarantine kind of rhythm has separated you from other people. And maybe because you're not spending time with an accountability partner or a wise influence, you have suffered harm. And you need to reconnect with them, even if it's digitally. Some of you, because there's not a certain person in your life, because you're not seeing your life group consistently or seeing a mentor or a friend, whatever, you are suffering. And you have the opportunity to change direction, to begin to walk with them, to allow that influence into your life. We see this a little bit with Paul and the Corinthian people. The Corinthian people, they had everything. They had great numbers at their churches. They had great leaders. They had great teaching. They had amazing resources. They spoke in tongues. They prophesied and all this stuff. But Paul constantly wrote to them about the way that they allowed culture to affect them. That they would allow the culture of their major city, which had a lot of trade going through it, to affect them. They were living just like everyone else, even though they were Christ followers. And Paul writes to them over and over, and he's like, guys, you can't approach sex the way the world does. You can't approach eating the way the world does. You can't approach thinking the way the world does. You can't approach doing life the way the world does. You've got to walk with the wise. You've got to be like Jesus. You've got to do things a little bit differently, because if you are a companion of fools, you will suffer harm. So who should we look for? Who should we look for in life? Who should we spend time with? Hey, here's just 4 quick things that might help you filter who you should be allowing into your life so that you can walk with the wise, so that you can become wise. If you're a Jesus follower, I would say it's very important to surround yourself with people that are following Jesus. Because when you are surrounded by people who are following Jesus, you're more likely to follow Jesus. But these next 3 can go really for people that believe in Jesus or not, follow Jesus or not. Look for people who live wisely. Duh, that's the Bible verse. Look for people who live wisely. Look at people who don't seem to have chaos from their own decisions, who don't just destroy their lives with the decisions they make. Look for people that are wise financially, wise relationally, wise with their families, wise in their careers, wise with the different things that are going on in their life. Look for people who are living wisely. Another thing you could do is look for people who will partner with you, There's a big difference between someone who tells you what to do and someone who partners with you. Yeah, someone can tell you what to do, and that's great, but the people that you should allow really close into your life are the people who partner with you. The people who don't just say you should do this, but they help you do it. They show you how to do it. They lead you in the right direction. 4th thing is this: look for people who treat you and others with love. Sometimes we settle for, well, they treat me with love. Well, they don't treat their parents, their other friends, their exes with love. Guess what? You're next. And so we must look for people who treat us with love and other people with love, who bring love and encouragement and light into our lives. And maybe you don't feel peace because you don't have anybody that encourages you in your life. Maybe you don't feel peace because you have just people who tear you down and rip you apart and criticize you. And you've got to look for people who will speak life into your life. Now I know the question that may come about If you're a Jesus follower, you say, well, we're supposed to reach out to an unbelieving world. And if you're not a Jesus follower, you say, well, how do I fit into this? Can I ever be a part of this if I'm not already believing? Of course. The mission of Jesus was to go into a broken world. Jesus was called a drunkard and a glutton and a friend of sinners. Why was he called that? Because he spent time with them. But you've got to ask yourself a question. As we look at Jesus, we've got to ask ourselves a question. Are you the influencer or the influenced? Are you the influencer or the influenced? If you cannot hang around certain people and not be influenced by them negatively, you've got to be wise about when you spend time with them, how you spend time with them, what places you spend time with them. You don't have to cut off the relationship. You don't have to go up to them and say, like, you're not wise, you're an idiot, I'm not gonna hang out with you. Like, that's not a loving thing. We don't see Jesus doing that. But we've got to think about how are we allowing them into our lives? Because the issue is not just hanging around people. When we're talking about all this, we're talking about that close circle. The people you date, the people that are like the 3 or 4 closest friends to you, the people that really, really, really have influence on you. And we've got to be wise with those people. Yeah, you could be acquaintances, you could be friends with people that are completely unwise, and you can try to influence them. But that tight-knit group, we've got to be very, very careful. And we've got to ask ourselves, if you got someone in that tight group and you're like, they are tearing me down, they're pulling me away from God, I constantly make foolish choices when I'm with them, you've got to look at yourself and say, I don't know if I can continue to be with them in that same way. Are you the influencer or the influence? If you're the influencer, just keep on going. Go out into a broken world and just hang out with them as much as you can and bring light into their lives. But if you're like most of us and you kind of get influenced by the people around you, or you tend to have some weak spots, we've got to really, really pay attention to that. Let me just close with this action step, and it's pretty simple. Do one thing that helps you walk with the wise, or helps you avoid the fools. Do one thing. Maybe for you, it's you've been like in this whole quarantine, you've been like, well, I'm not going back to life groups until I can see them face to face. That's kind of foolish. Like what makes us think that all of a sudden we can just live life without the good influences that helped us get to where we are? We've got to look at our circle, and we've got to say, I got to stay in that influence, even though I'm not with them physically. Maybe you need to jump on your Zoom or your FaceTime this week and spend some time. Maybe it's just, I need to reach out to that mentor or that friend, and I need to tell them, hey, I need some accountability, I need some help, I need you to help me in this situation. I just need some encouragement. Maybe you're listening to this and you're thinking, yeah, I tried a life group a few years ago, but it didn't go so well, or didn't end so well, or we just kind of broke apart, and I just haven't reconnected. I want to challenge you. Out in the chat, we'll put the link to sign up for a life group, but I want to challenge you, try again. There's not an expiration date on walking with the wise. It's not like, I walked with the wise 3 years ago, so I should be good for the next 3 decades. No, you need to walk with the wise daily. Jump back in a life group, try something out. The first one doesn't work, go to the next one. And here's the good thing, right now you can kind of test the waters, talk to them a little bit on Zoom, and then if it doesn't work out so much, then it's not the whole awkward thing. You can just try out a different life group. But we've got to be able to connect to the wise. Maybe you've given your life to Christ recently, and you say, man, I need that influence. I need to take that next step. Maybe for the first time, sign up for a life group. Allow yourself to walk with the wise. Allow someone into your life that is where maybe you want to go, and let them influence you. Maybe you need to take your TV and unplug it for the next few months. Maybe you need to block a certain channel, throw your laptop away, block certain websites, get rid of podcasts, get rid of music. And I'm not saying you can only listen to like Christian stuff, man. That's not the point here. The point is looking at what we allow to influence us, and does it help us or hurt us? Does it walk us towards wisdom or point us towards brokenness? And take one action step this week to help walk with the wise, to help you avoid being a companion of fools. And you will experience peace because of it, because all we can do is control what we can control. All we can do is make sure that for us and for the people around us, that we allow ourselves and expose ourselves to as much peace as possible in the midst of a chaotic world. Let me pray for you. Heavenly Father, I pray for each person that's listening to this right now, whether it's a Jesus follower or someone that's not sure about what they believe or someone that's like, I don't believe in God at all. Lord, I pray for each person listening to this, that you would guide them towards one step, maybe towards one name, towards one person in their life that they need to walk with so that they can experience peace in a broken world, so that they can help change the way they make choices. That they can help limit the chaos that comes from the people around them and from within them. Lord, we have a crazy world as it is. We don't need to make it any worse. Help us walk with the wise. Help us sign up for that life group. Help us take that step right now to click that link. Even during the middle of a prayer, click that link right there. Click it, click it, click it. And to join in with that life group and to expose yourself to some wise people that will help you in your path of following after Jesus and having wisdom in your life. Lord, I pray for each person that can think of the foolish influence in their life. And I pray that you would give them the loving response for removing that influence from their life. Because ultimately you want what's best for us. Ultimately you love us and you don't want us to go down a path of brokenness. Lord, I pray that we would know you love us, that you're the peace bringer in the middle of chaos, and that when we follow after you, lives, hearts, relationships, situations, circumstances will be changed. Lord, we love you. Thank you for loving us. In your name we pray. Amen.